Okay, welcome back. We continue on. Part of what I was complaining about is that a lot of the theories that we have in marketing and retailing come from economics. And the problem is that they assume rational behavior. And I find that we really are not very often that rational. It depends on people and it depends on the situation. We'll see a lot more of this as we go, but this is partly where we get these brand new, supposedly brand new fields like behavioral finance and behavioral economics, where they've kind of woken up and said, my gosh, people really aren't that rational. So what can make us less rational? And please don't say emotion, even though that could be an answer. What else? Your mood. If you're in a good mood or a bad mood, happy, sad, angry. Very, very dangerous. If you go shopping when you're hungry, my gosh, even a 7-Eleven is dangerous. You'd be like, have you got any larger baskets? These are too small. Impulse, we'll talk about this more. Impulse is actually very common in terms of buying something without thinking in advance or planning in advance. Time, well, it depends. Are you in a hurry? That can make a big difference. We never have perfect information. Who are you with? Where are you at? Are they offering something like 0% financing? That can definitely have an effect. Health, that's kind of an interesting one. If you're sick, you go see a doctor and they prescribe medicine, do you want to buy the cheaper one? Or are you looking for efficacy? You want it to be really good medicine so that you'll get well. Then in some countries, maybe the insurance is going to pay for it. In some ways, it just seems insanely complicated because even just one person, your behavior can change all throughout the day, depending on where you are, who you're with, whether you're hungry, whether you're in a hurry. Well, we can come to understand these things, so we have to at least begin, and then we can move forward from there. When I joke about marketing having too much magic and too much voodoo, I'm really saying that too many things are out there in this world, even today, published or spoken, which have not been tested, or they were published based on one test, and any replications, or people tried to do it again, failed. Then they should talk about these limitations. They can't just keep plowing forward to say this is how it is when the evidence doesn't support that. As an example, I'm not sure if you've heard of subliminal advertising. Subliminal, that's not a common word. Liminal means you're conscious. So subliminal means it's beneath your consciousness. And the idea here, maybe a better analogy would be to think about video games or watching TV. How many frames per second do we see? We don't notice at all. But NTSC in the US is about 29 to 30 frames per second, and PAL in Asia is 25 frames per second. So go back to your childhood days where you might have drawn a little cartoon in the corner of your notepad or your book. And when you flip the pages, you can see the cartoon move. It's the same concept. So you have 25 frames per second going by as you watch TV. What if they put some sort of information in some of those frames? It's not enough that you're aware of seeing it, but they're saying you do see it. It's beneath your consciousness. And there was a publication in the 1950s where they said they put messages into the film in the cinema, and they said, drink Coke, eat popcorn. And they claimed that the sales of Coke and popcorn increased by more than 50%. People were excited in both good and bad ways. Some people were like, wow, that's fantastic. This is amazing. We're going to increase our sales. And other people were like, oh, this is terrible. This is mind control. They're going to make us into zombies. So other people went and they tried to replicate or do this again. Never succeeded, ever. Wow. But textbooks talked about this for decades, and I have still met people today who believe in subliminal advertising. The research findings basically show that you can become aware. That's about all. If we took a brand, let's say it's totally fake, doesn't exist, we run subliminal advertising and show you this brand, and then later on we ask you what brands you know, you may recognize that brand. But that's it. It didn't make any kind of motivation or desire to buy or anything beyond just awareness. So big deal. I'd rather spend my money in a way that has more potential benefits than just maybe gaining awareness. So again, I'm talking about trying to make marketing more scientific. An empirical generalization would be similar to gravity. Once we've found it, we test it. We test it against different product categories in different countries, different situations, in market growth, in market decline. We try to find if there's boundary conditions, try to understand how well does it work or when does it not work. But marketing people, and even the marketing journals, seem to prefer running off to the next greatest thing, new and improved. They've even researched in the journals that the journals have been more likely to publish new studies and new findings than research that goes back and replicates and tests old findings, and even less if those new findings do not support the old findings. So this is not right, and this needs to change. I think you'll come to see from today onwards that consumer behavior is extremely important, across all aspects of marketing, even before. What are we trying to make? What kind of product? What kind of service? Why would they buy? What would we advertise? These are the sorts of things that we'll be looking at. For any of you who studied marketing with me, you better be able to answer this, because I said it over and over and over. Marketing is about what? I have to get my game show buzzer out again. People say selling. Bzz. No, come on. What do we say over and over? Now, of course, you said marketing is about understanding and satisfying customer wants and needs. Right. Good job. And back to our marketing funnel. The problem is awareness does not necessarily lead to interest nor trial, and just because you try doesn't mean you come back and use it again, and whether you use it again or not doesn't necessarily mean you like it. So loyalty is one of the big ones that we're going to challenge. I am not a big fan of customer loyalty. So let's start at the basics here. What's the difference between consumer behavior and customer behavior? And don't say they're spelled differently. I want to know a little bit more than that. If you're not sure, think about the root. Consumer, take off the R, consume. That doesn't work so well for customer, but it does give us a clue, right? The consumer consumes. So that implies that the customer may not necessarily be the consumer. Aha. We can split this into a little bit more detail. So we might have somebody out shopping, and they may be buying it, but they may or may not be the one paying for it. Oh. And then, even more complicated, they may or may not be the one who's using it. Wow. This makes it a lot more complicated. For one thing, your motivations may be different. For another thing, like market research, who should I talk to? So the more that you have all of these roles combined, the more likely you're going to have a complicated situation. Who buys 3M Post-it notes? I mean specifically from 3M, the famous Post-it note. I know one person, John Detlef, who really prefers 3M Post-it notes. He says they're stickier. I say, okay. I also say they're 3 times more expensive than non-branded. So let's say you go to B2S or anywhere, really, and they may have some Post-it notes which are actually not Post-it notes. They're just sticky notes, look exactly the same, work exactly the same way, but they cost a lot less. So which one would you buy? Golly, that wouldn't take me very long to answer. I buy the cheap ones. If I leave a note on somebody's desk, do you think they're going to pick it up and kind of, feel the paper and say, wow, 3M, nice, real Post-it note? I think, no, I don't think so. It's probably going to go to the trash pretty quickly. So these are really not that important. Why do people pay 3 times more to get Post-it notes? Well, for me, the scenario that I think about is when you're at the office and maybe it's kind of a slow day and you say, hey, let's order some office supplies. Well, if you're ordering the office supplies, you become the customer, but you don't have to pay for it. Somebody within the company is going to pay for it. So you become the customer or the buyer, but not the payer, and then you're also the user. So you might not really care about brand or price. You might even take some home to use at home. But if you reverse that, let's say it's the finance people, you're the employee and they're offering you a company car and you're like, hey, Mercedes sounds pretty good to me. But the finance people are the ones who are paying. So they'd be like, Toyota sounds pretty good to us. You see what I mean? So it really can depend. Again, situational variables, who is it who's shopping? Is it a housewife or is it a maid? Is it you? Are you by yourself or are you with friends? Are you with relatives? Are you with your grandparents? Who does most of the shopping? Men or women? Typically women do more of the shopping. So what if the women are with children? Children tend to be impatient and kind of full of energy, difficult to deal with. And so it can make the shopping enjoyment go down. Well, extend that. What about shopping with men? I can only ask women this, but have you ever gone shopping with men? Is it fun? It seems to me that somehow out shopping, it influences men and women differently. So it's really strange, but interesting, It's like men somehow weigh more and more, like gravity starts to pull on them more and more with every step that they take. So it's like they're getting heavier and more tired and a lot of exertion, and they keep looking at their watch and kind of breathing heavily, like, are you almost finished yet? And this would also affect the woman's shopping enjoyment. So a woman shopping with a man or shopping with children might not enjoy it as much, might not spend as much time, and might not spend as much money. So if we were clever enough retailers, we might try to deal with this. You take a man into a store that sells kitchenware, dishes, silverware, candles, glasses. They're not that exciting. But maybe if you put in a section where they have like a grill section, something like a mini bar, something which is a little bit more fun for the man, maybe that'll entertain them. Or one of my favorites, think about going to a lingerie store like Victoria's Secret. Think about how uncomfortable and awkward that could be for your average man. If you look at the merchandise with too much interest, people might raise their eyebrows. Is this for you or for someone else? Assuming that you're going into the store with a woman, if you look at other women with too much interest, you face potential danger. Wow, so what's a man supposed to do? But again, in some clever situations, the retailer might create an area for men to sit and wait. And there in that area, they have a TV. And on that TV, they're showing models modeling Victoria's Secret, swimsuits or lingerie. And so now the men are pretty happily entertained and they're still nearby. So the woman can ask them for their opinion if they want to, or at least just keep them nearby and entertained. There are some very clever applications. So again, the context, the situation can really make a difference. And who you're with, the influencers. Again, children can be influencers, salespeople, friends, lots of different situations. AA is similar to 3M. It's pretty expensive, and yet people buy it. And if it's just sort of a business repeat purchase, maybe they don't think about it. Again, shopping when hungry. Ooh, very dangerous. Do you like to shop when it's crowded? Most people say no, and yet I find this really funny. They also say they never change the time or day that they go shopping. So I'm basically talking mostly about supermarket, like food shopping. People say they don't like to go shopping when it's crowded, and yet they always go the same day and time. So it's crowded. Some more examples. Who buys the dog food or the baby food? Not the dog, not the baby. So this is kind of fun because what should we say? That picture is a winner one year of the ugliest dog competition. Why they have a competition like that and why you'd want to buy such an ugly dog, I don't know. Different wants and needs, I guess. Men's razors, kind of an interesting story because, again, maybe 70% of grocery shopping is still undertaken by women. So should we advertise to the men or to the women? Interesting. Gillette actually ran campaigns targeting women. And another thing they did was try to find a way to reach the men, like putting the razors into the mini mart at the gasoline station. Men might be out buying gas more than they'd be going to the supermarket. Here in Asia, with the extended families, we might have parents paying for the children's cell phone bill. So why are they going to care about the promotion? They're not paying the bill. Toys. I'm going to come back with an example about that. I think it's pretty neat. Wow. Not to make you hungry here, but we got some nice Starbucks ice cream up there, and then a little bit to the right, Frosty Paws. What? Frozen treats for dogs. So don't buy that by mistake. Well, I guarantee you some people will buy that by mistake and maybe even eat it before they figure it out. Or maybe they even like it, who knows? But my point is, people rarely blame themselves. So if you, God, look at that, it's only 10 cents different. The price almost the same as Starbucks. If somebody buys this by mistake, who do you think they're going to blame? Probably the retailer. Yeah, so you're risking some danger here. Do people buy ice cream for dogs? You know, it's like they have a print ad sometimes. They say, it's not ice cream, but your dog will think it is. To which I say, yeah, same thing could be said about ice cubes, right? They're a lot cheaper. I can give my dog some ice cubes and they'll think it's ice cream, but it's not. Oh, these poor pets. Oh, this is becoming more and more popular. So they have all of these costumes for pets, of course, around Halloween, but now more and more they have costumes and even clothing lines for sale. Maybe TikTok is going to make this even worse. Seriously, they are trying to sell fashion lines for pets in some of the stores that sell pet food. Basically the big ones like PetSmart, Petco. We don't really have that kind of store here in Thailand, but interesting to see. Is it niche? Very attractive, huh? Again, for market research, this becomes kind of complicated because the person who goes shopping might be the housewife, might be the maid. The person who pays might be the housewife, might be the husband. Who actually uses the product might be the maid. So depending on what you're trying to investigate, like purchase criteria, purchase decision, advertising awareness, liking, whatever, or actual usage, you really have to think this through before you conduct your research. How about buying a car? Are you paying for it yourself or is somebody else helping pay? Here in Asia, maybe the family might be helping pay. Can you imagine if you were at the motor show and you watch other people shopping and most people get in the front seat or the passenger seat? What if you see somebody just get in the back seat? So maybe this person's getting a car, but they're not going to be the driver. Huh, that's kind of interesting. The Starship came out in the 1980s by Beechcraft, and I actually lived very near to Beechcraft, so I would see this out in their hangar, their parking, or flying their test flights. It was really neat. But end of the day, it was trying to compete with the corporate jet or cater to the really wealthy, celebrities. So if you think this through, okay, What do people who fly in corporate jets want? They want speed. They want privacy. This plane is not a jet. It's called a turboprop. So it's got twin propellers, and they're in the back, which was really unusual. Very interesting. It was more fuel efficient. So when they came up with the concept, they had been facing the energy crises in the 1970s. But by the time they actually developed and launched this plane, the energy crisis had passed. So the selling point about fuel efficiency was not as impressive. And then go back to who the actual payer and user is. The user are corporate executives. They're not paying for it. The company's paying for it. So they're not so concerned about the price. They're not so concerned about the fuel efficiency, but they are concerned about the speed, which is not as fast as a jet. And they're also concerned, possibly, about not attracting attention, which this would. So if you imagine, like the president of a big conglomerate like CP, and they go sneaking off to go sign some deals in some other city, they don't want people looking at them and taking pictures. So it's kind of like fail. And then they said, hey, it can handle really well, too. And you're like, whoa, this is not a sports car. I'm not going to be making a bunch of turns and loops. I just need to take off, go straight, land. So even the maneuverability, fail. It didn't hit or tick the right boxes. And it failed. This was a very expensive failure, and people actually lost their jobs. Wow. Gift giving is an interesting variation on how consumer behavior could change. Would you buy soap that costs like, say, 500 baht? I wouldn't. Not likely. But let's say that you have to buy a gift for somebody, and it has to cost at least 500 baht. And maybe you're in a hurry and you don't really like to shop, and you happen to run across some sort of 500 baht bar of soap, and you're like, ta-da! Mission accomplished. So maybe, that's a very different situation. I was given these shampoo and conditioners, and they're like 1,000 baht. Yeah, they're from Ralph Lauren and they smell nice, but geez, I can get some pretty nice shampoo a lot cheaper than that. So receiving it as a gift or giving something as a gift might be very different than your own normal consumer behavior. And then you can open a whole nother door if you talk about like gift giving among the Chinese. What the heck is that? Well, that's me. And that is a pillow, believe it or not. A fish pillow. I mean, my gosh, who wouldn't want one? Yeah, okay, never mind. Well, who would buy one? I bought it. But I didn't buy it for myself. I bought it as a joke. So, small price to pay, $12 plus tax. I was going to visit one of my uncles. And this uncle, like any good uncle, is a real joker. Loves to tell jokes, play tricks on people. And he also loves to fish. And fishermen are famous for lying about the one that got away, about how big it was, and they almost got it. And so I devised this as a kind of joke. And I gave it to him. I never asked him what he did with it. We have two different gift-giving elements here. One would be making merit, so giving gifts to the monk, Saibat. And then the other is giving gifts to other people, like at New Year's. And I just want to point out that when you give a gift, you also have a bit of face and status involved as well. So is it wise to put something like a private label brand within this gift basket? We got Home Fresh Mart instead of Coffee Mate. I think it's kind of interesting to point out. This particular gift basket is to give to monks. And under the teachings of Buddhism, we're not supposed to have attachments. So it shouldn't matter. They shouldn't complain and say, hey, where's the Coffee Mate? I want Nestle. Now, they'd say, thank you, I'll take whatever you give, I'll eat whatever you give. Now, if this was New Year's and you give this to your boss, that might look kind of bad, right? Like, ew, you couldn't even give me a branded product like Nescafe Coffee Mate? Wow, Nestle Coffee Mate? Well, boss, if you would pay me more, I could give you a nicer gift basket, huh? Funny to think about. All right, warning. Isn't that fun? The things we can do these days. Okay, I want to get you used to doing some things online. I don't know if we're going to continue to be online, but we have our e-learning with a kind of discussion board. So within 3 days from today, so add 3 more days by Friday, okay, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, by Friday, post on our e-learning discussion board 2 of your own examples about when consumer behavior might be different publicly versus privately. Now, I didn't give you any examples about this, so come up with your own, and I'll grade these for 2 points. All righty? And this also gets you kind of familiar with our e-learning. Okay, back to our work here. Marketing always teaches and tells us that we need to differentiate. And we talked about this in marketing class. We'll talk about it again in this class. But how? How do you differentiate? Because, in terms of like electronics, the components typically come from the same manufacturers, so you really can't be very different from anyone else. End of the day, you're going to have many, many brands offering very, very similar products. So this sort of shifts it to why would people buy? That's a question that I think is worth exploring. When we have things like business plan competitions and a lot of ideas come up, that's great, yeah, great, brainstorm. But the first thing I start to ask is, would I pay for that? If I wouldn't pay for that, why would other people pay for that? And I think this is a quick way to test your idea. What's the benefit? Would people be willing to pay? But be careful. Are people always rational? I want to tell you about a movie because there was a scene in this movie that was just perfect. And I used to talk about it in class, but of course I couldn't really show it. But now that we have time to look for these things, I found a way. It was in the early days of Tom Hanks's career. You know Tom Hanks, right? And in the movie, he was a little boy, but he was just sort of ignored and pushed around and go over there, go away, sit down, be quiet. And so he just got fed up and he made a wish that he wanted to be big. And he woke up and he really did become big. And he had a job working for a company that made toys. So this led to a really cool scene in the movie.
Next. Go ahead. You must be at least this big to ride this ride.
What?
Look, why don't you try to kitty with it?
Make my wish right. Sleep.
Bring down your dungarees and stuff for the laundry, okay?
Okay.
He's got a...
Keep it a secret. Come on.
This is just format of 8 overlapping demographic groups. In the 9 to 11-year-old bracket, 37% market share.
Sorry.
And that from all of last year. Yes?
It turns from a building into a robot, right?
Well, if you had read your industry breakdown, you would see...
That might help.
Oh.
What?
What don't you get?
Building, that's not any fun.
This is a skyscraper.
Well, couldn't it be a big prehistoric insect with maybe like giant claws that could pick up a car? You know?
Just got a very good idea here. The robot turns into a bug.
A building is an earth bug. It moves.
Yeah.
It's got all kinds of parts.
Stuff and
Well done, Josh. Well done.
red ants.
That's really a classic scene. You know, you got this whole room of kind of yes men, you know, nobody disagreeing. And are they really familiar with what kids like to play with? He's sitting there trying to play with this prototype while they talk about how great it is and how well it's going to sell. And then he raises his hand because he's still a little kid inside. And he's like, what's fun about that? And they're like, it's like this, like that. But he's a kid. He's a real kid. And he's like, what's fun about that? It's not fun. So I really love that scene. I went back and searched for it to give you a clip. I don't know if you enjoy it, but at least you know Tom Hanks, and now you've seen him as a much younger man. And think about supermarkets. We'll still look at this more, but you know, a lot of times they're really not that consumer friendly or intuitive. You can think about it in terms of solution selling, like putting items together that often are purchased together. But there are some other ways to think about it too. Where you put the items on the shelf, high or low, and who's the one who's likely to be buying it, like young or elderly. We'll come back to this. You know, in a time-pressured culture, people typically dislike shopping and they want to get in and get out as quickly as possible. They may have a shopping list. They might even choose to go to stores because they are familiar with those stores. So they know where to park, they know how to go in and find the items and get back out as quickly as possible. And yet sometimes the supermarkets deliberately rearrange things to slow you down, which annoys their own customers. You try to get something like, this is not so common here, but let's say a can of soup. And there's maybe 25 different types of soup. You know, do they alphabetize them? Heck no. They randomize them so that you spend more time searching and maybe you buy something more on impulse. So personally, this is something kind of a pet peeve. You know, it offends me. I think, is it that difficult to really think about the consumer? But apparently it is, because a lot of companies create things, launch things, and then they fail. And you look at it and you think, my gosh, what were they thinking? You know, I wouldn't pay for that. So the underlying theme, which we're going to see along the sessions, many sessions, is about motivation. You know, yeah, we're offering different brands and they're giving you pretty much the same benefit. So we have to figure out, one, how to brand it, and two, how to communicate in a way that would really motivate the consumer. That's the key. Or at least I'd say it's a very wise road to take. You know, it certainly is not going to hurt. You know, if you can figure out what the key motivations are and try to push those buttons, build your ads upon that, maybe even your brand about that. Yeah. So why drink diet soft drinks? You say, because I'm thirsty. You can drink water. Why do people choose a diet soft drink? Some people don't like bland water. Why not drink a regular soft drink? Well, that's what I'm talking about. So they might be concerned about their teeth. They might be concerned about sugar. Did you know that even diet soft drinks can be bad for your teeth? They still have some acid. So we'll look at this more as we go. Lots and lots of application to this. And we'll see. We'll explore this and then build upon this in terms of how we can communicate better in our advertisements. More to come. So how about a car? We just briefly talked about cars, but how would you choose a car? Now, if you were paying for it yourself, then maybe part of it depends on what you can afford. But still, you know, some people say, I just need something that takes me from point A to point B, so it doesn't need to be fancy. Maybe it doesn't even need to be comfortable. I know a guy who's in his 80s, and he has a station wagon. Now, his children are old, grown up, you know. He doesn't need a station wagon, but he plays golf. So for him, the station wagon is an easy way to load the golf clubs. Interesting. Could you buy a station wagon even though you don't have kids? Anything. You can do anything you want. In the past, one of my neighbors had a station wagon, didn't have kids. He just liked the look, and he also played golf. So maybe golf is the variable here. Don't know. Here in Thailand, sometimes the color of a car is more expensive, which makes no sense at all. So recently, white cars have been popular to the point that some dealerships charge a higher price for white because a lot of people want white. They're totally taking advantage of supply and demand. It's ridiculous. I don't particularly like white cars because they're really difficult to keep clean. Silver is a pretty good car. You know, people can't really tell if it's dirty, and they can't really tell if it's scratched. But then again, silver is kind of boring, huh? So, I don't know. Do you care? Maybe it could be about superstition. I actually heard a story from a car dealer, and they told me that this young Thai woman, I'm guessing in her 20s, I don't know, maybe teens, but she was at the motor show, and her parents were going to pay for the car. She shopped for a new car purely based on color. She wanted the color pink that matched what she was looking for, and that's it. That was her main and only purchase criteria, and she shopped the whole motor show until she found the best one for pink and bought that car. And later on, didn't like it. Ooh, well, we learn as we grow, huh? Why do so many people get SUVs like the Fortuner? They're really, really popular. And I always wonder, like, we don't have snow. We don't have ice. We don't even have hills. You know, Bangkok is a very flat city. Is it for floods? Is it because of potholes? So to me, SUVs and pickup trucks in some ways may be a case of selling the benefit where people like it. They like the idea of it, even though they might not actually use it. I'm guilty too. I study my own behavior. I have always been fascinated with the stylus. I want to get a tablet with a stylus. I want to get a phone with a stylus. I want to get, a stylus. And each time I've gotten one, I don't use it. I don't use it. And then I dropped my stylus and the tip broke. Wow. Immediately that became my task. I had to, my mission had to be to repair my stylus. And then I still didn't use it. And now I can't find it. But I still love the idea of a stylus. Some of the iPad advertisements, they showed the people drawing beautiful pictures or taking their tablet to the Antarctica and conducting scientific experiments. And you're like, wow, that is so cool. And so you buy one. What do you do with it? Nothing. Watch Facebook and social media. No, I don't know. I don't know what you do with it. But I'm saying we often buy things because of what it can do. The G-Shock watch. Oh my gosh, it can travel the world and do all these things. But what do we actually do with it? Nothing really, not much. So back to cars and back to ads. What should we say to motivate people? And what if it's a different type of car? So you're talking a luxury car or a sports car or something like a van or a station wagon, kind of big family kind of car. These advertisements could be really different. So I'm going to show you some ads, and I want you to think this through. What are they trying to say? And is it motivating? Do you think they did a good job? Well, I must say that looks like a very boring motor show compared to ours, but how did they feel? They look so happy, laughing, and because they could fit. Poor guys. Well, there are some really large people around.
Another day, another dollar. Daylight comes, I'm on the way. Another day, another dollar. Working my whole life away. The boss told me I'd get paid weekly. And that's exactly how I'm paid. Another day, another dollar. Working my whole life away. Another day, another dollar. Daylight comes, I'm on my way.
That's really cute. I mean, it's cute, but is it motivating? For this guy, for whatever reason, he really had this passionate drive that he wants to get this car. You know, it's his dream car somehow. He's working his butt off and he's saving all his money, and yet he doesn't actually know how much it costs. And when he finds out, oh my gosh, it's great for the price of good. And so he bought two. Yeah, right. Again, it's cute and it's a nice message. This is something we'll come back to because really traditionally advertising is supposed to be telling us something about the product. It should be telling us about how much fuel efficiency, how much horsepower, how many cc's, you know, but did it? I must have missed that. It didn't tell us anything except it's great for the price of good.
Okay, class, let's quickly review Europe. Can anyone tell me what country this island is? Noah? Really? Very good. And just under that, we have a continent. Who knows what William, can you tell us what's so interesting out the window? Okay, pay attention this time, okay?
Can I help you?
Yeah, do you have the new 911?
Yeah, it's right over here. You want to get in?
Really?
Sure.
Do you have a business card?
Sure.
Thanks. I'll see you in about 20 years.
It's a funny thing about a Porsche. There's the moment you know you want one. There's the moment you first own one. And for the truly afflicted, there's the decade or two that passes in between. From its first days on the road over 40 years ago, the 911 has ignited the kind of passion in drivers that only a Porsche can. And now, once again, it is poised to redefine what's possible. Introducing the new 911 Carrera. It is, quite simply, the purest expression of who we are. Porsche. There is no substitute.
So what do you think? Is that motivating? I like this one. I mean, the Volkswagen ad was cute, but this one's much more realistic, that people may idolize something and really, really want it. I remember as a kid, I had a poster of a Lamborghini on my wall, and I still really would love to have a Lamborghini, and I may never, but hey, we dream, right? So this kid, wow, you see him in the cockpit of the car, and he just has this look on his face like, yes, someday, you know. And then he takes the guy's business card. I'll see you in about 20 years or so. That's cute. Now, the 911's been around for many decades, and it actually has a nickname. The nickname is the Widowmaker. Do you remember what kind of car Paul Walker was driving when he died? 911. Even more so for the 911 Turbo. So a widow is a woman whose husband died. So this car is the Widowmaker. It kills husbands. You go, wow, cool. I want one. But why would somebody want one? Maybe they think it's just a symbol of success, or they think it's really, really well engineered. Other people might think, oh yeah, I can tame the power. Well, maybe, maybe not.
BMW Z4 Roadster, the ultimate driving machine.
You might want to rewind and watch that one again. This is kind of a mysterious ad, and yet it's pretty cool. Well, you know, you really do need to go back and watch. Like, what's the execution? What are they showing us? They show us a guy driving a BMW convertible Z4, and it sort of shows these cut scenes, like the headlights and the eyes, the engine, the air flowing and the breathing and the blood flowing and the fluids and the gas, and you know, on and on and on. And so it's, wow, it's like, what is it? Cyborg? It's like man and machine become one. And I think, hey, that's nice, actually, because when you talk about a sports car, some people say you don't drive a sports car. You know, the purpose is you become one with the car. And that seems to be what this ad is showing. So again, if you're really into sports cars and you like that kind of message, well done. What I can't figure out is the rain. Why is this guy driving a convertible in the rain? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe sometimes you lose your mind. Whoa, what was that all about? Is the guy on drugs or what? Looks like toys for big boys. Watch out, man, watch out for that cloud. Oh, not even a cloud, it's the shadow of a cloud. What's that going to do to your car? Nothing. Okay, so I like this ad, actually. I'm making fun of it. But here we have a guy, again, driving a sports car, convertible, this time a Mercedes. We get to see a little bit more of the driver. So in terms of your feeling of segmentation, you might get a little bit more of a sense. Not young, not super young. But anyway, we've got him driving in a desert, it looks like. Wow. And he's avoiding these shadows of clouds. Fun. Supposedly showing us the performance, although this doesn't mean a lot to me. But where do these shadows come from? That's the interesting part. So up there in the clouds, you have what? I don't know. Cloud monsters, elementals, I don't know. But somehow they're pushing these obstacles in front of this man, and this man repeatedly avoids these obstacles. And then somehow these beings up in the clouds start to fight, and it brings about the rain. So now the sensible guy stops, puts up the roof, and drives off. So what makes this interesting to me is the theme. It's like a really classic theme of humans or man versus nature. And we win. What could be better than that? Although, again, these ads are sort of breaking the rules of traditional advertising and marketing because they didn't really tell us anything about the product. They didn't tell us anything specific about the horsepower, about anything. But I like the music. This one's very, emotional.
This is the sound. This is the sound.
Come on, seriously? Well, okay, it's cute. I mean, the visuals, riding on a horse, a baby on the beach. Oh my gosh, just total bliss until the stoplight comes. Yeah, I don't really believe that, but it's pretty. It's fun to watch. It's entertaining. Get the message. He really loves driving his car. Grown-ups can be so silly. But it's kind of fun to think about. I mean, it's definitely a feel-good advertisement. And again, the buyer, the user, the payer. So the parents are buying the car, but they may be thinking about the children. That's nice.
Oh. Come on.
L'amour m'étrange de sa âme et me rend. L'amour, c'est le soufflet qui me fait respirer à nouveau. Pour les autres, cela peut sembler étrange, mais ce que je fais, je le fais par amour. C'est étrange, mais l'amour a sa propre anesthésie et tire les l'enfer sans consommer à sa flamme. C'est l'amour, c'est l'amour. qui roule derrière les yeux de ses femmes. L'amour.
My gosh, they make some weird ads in New Zealand. But it's fun and funny. Well, I mean, this is something that we'll talk about later. What do you think are the objectives? You're not going to buy a car because your cat loves to ride in the back seat, are you? I doubt it. Who knows what the cat likes, and how often do you take your cat out for a ride? But it raises awareness, interest, it entertains you. You know the brand, maybe you like the brand, maybe you'll consider the brand. You know, you don't just see a car advertisement and then run by a car. So I'm just saying, you know, there's different objectives and motivations, and sometimes they don't follow the rules. But we'll talk about these things as we go. Can understanding consumer behavior make us better marketers? Absolutely. Help us make more effective advertising? For sure. So that's fun, you know. Consumer behavior involves a lot of psychology. And as I said, I think you'll learn a lot as we go through this class.